Hello, it's Eric Hyatt today with a quick update on the real estate industry news. The big story in the national headlines right now is that the National Association of Realtors were set to pay a $1.8 billion fine because they were sued in court, them as well as several different brokerages that were named. Now, what the idea behind the case was is they were being sued because the commissions were fixed or set by the National Association of Realtors. And when they list on the MLS, they were supposedly price fixing or setting a price, and that was forcing sellers to pay a buyer's agent's commission. Now, that's simply not true, first off. Now, the court case is going to be appealed. It's going to probably go on for years. It's not really going to have a direct impact on the industry yet. But I want to explain something to everybody out there to maybe how this works and how commissions in the real estate industry kind of work. So I tend to do more listings than I do for buyer's agents, but of course, as a realtor, I help both buyers and sellers. Out of the sellers, you negotiate right off the bat. You say, hey, look, I know you want to sell your house. Let me first look at the comparable sales in the area and give you an idea on value, what I think that it will sell for. All right, and then we negotiate about the things I will do for you. So for my clients, I do quite a bit, and not every agent does the same things, but I do professional HDR photography. If you look on Zillow, not all photos are the same. Some are well lit, they look very beautiful. Some look like they were done on a phone back from 2005. So the quality of the photos really depends on the photographer, the camera, lighting, and then being a professional. Again, I don't do your photos, I hire a professional to do them. In addition, we're in the days where everyone relies on video, just like you are right here. So we do professional video tours with drone videography, right? We put it all together and we market on all the social platforms. In addition, I always buy a home warranty for the sellers. So that means during the listing period, if one of your major appliance breaks, we can use the home warranty to get it fixed or replaced for you. So when you're selling a house, you don't have this big unexpected expense coming up out of nowhere. Again, that's another thing that I cover. I also create a website for you, a custom website that hosts all the pictures, the videos that we can share. So it's not just on Zillow. When people look at that, they usually compare it to 3 or 4 other properties, right? Again, these are just a few of the things that I do for my clients. We have a professional showing service. People call into a number. If they're a realtor, they share their credentials. They're able to get an access code for that day. I pay for electronic lock boxes. They have a unique code that change every day. So if someone gets a code for that day, maybe their realtor's putting in the code, the buyer sees it over their shoulder, what they're putting in. They try to go back later that night to go back into the house. They're not able to. That code's unique and it's only for that one entry. It's about security, right? When you have a realtor come into your house, you know that they're vetted, had an FBI background check or fingerprinted. There's a level of standard to keep you safe when you're working with a realtor. Right? So anyway, these are all some of the things I do for clients on the listing side. And then we negotiate the commission, the compensation for what I do, right? Say it's 5%, say it's 6%, it could be anything that you negotiate. And then I share the commission with the buyer's agent. The big misnomer in this case, and now every state's a little different, right? But here in Colorado, what tends to happen is if you're on the buyer side, you usually work with a realtor. When you start working on your house search, you do a buyer's agency agreement. You establish, hey, look, I'm gonna help you find a house. Here's where I'm gonna be looking for it. I'm gonna help you with the contract, the negotiations, and I don't get paid as a buyer's agent until we get you a house, okay? Now, in that contract, you stipulate what your commission's gonna be on the buy side. Oftentimes, it's, say, 2.8% is what I most commonly see, all right? And when we do that, the buyer has agreed that their agent will receive the 2.8%. Most times that's paid by the seller's agent, right? Not the seller, the seller's agent, okay? The buyer's agent and the buyer isn't paying their agent, the seller's agent is. You say, well, how does that work? All right, again, remember that I represent sellers more often than not. So when I do my position about everything that I will do for the compensation, I say, hey, look, all these things I will do, and my commission is going to be, say, 6%. Out of that 6%, I'm sharing half of it, or 2.8%, or whatever the compensation is, with the buyer's agent. That's not coming from the seller. I already negotiate as a seller's agent what my compensation will be, and I agree to split that or share a portion of that with the buyer's agent if they bring a buyer. Now, if I were to find my own client, say I represent a buyer, it's a perfect fit for my seller, there's a possibility that it could, I could help them all out together. In which case, I wouldn't be a buyer's agent, I'd be a transaction broker. I would facilitate the paperwork and just give them all the information and help the sale go through. In which case, the initial compensation that we negotiated, whether it be 5%, 6%, whatever it is, that would be mine. But if in 99% of the time you have a buyer's agent, I'm agreeing to split it with them. So again, the big part of this case that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, and again, the article in the Denver Post today isn't written by the Denver Post, it was written by the New York Times, and the Denver Post just paid to put it back in their newspaper, which is a disservice to everybody out here because in every state, it's a little bit different in terms of how they work these things out, how a buyer's agency works, how a seller's agency agreement works. But again, I'm speaking here from Colorado, okay? So if I've negotiated my compensation, I'm willing to split it with the buyer's agent. Really, the seller isn't paying any additional, right? I'm agreeing to split what I'm making with them, okay? Whatever it may be. So that's the thing I wanted to clear up. And then here's the other thing. The article and the case itself is saying that, hey, if we got rid of this high compensation because the sellers are having to pay for the buyer's agents too, it's gonna lower the costs of the house. We can sell it for less. Everything across the board is gonna be less expensive. That's not the case. In an environment which it's more expensive than ever to be a buyer right now, right? Interest rates are around 20-year highs, close to 7%. So if you're a first-time home buyer and you saved enough for your down payment, you saved enough for your closing costs, and now where the seller's agent was gonna agree to pay your agent, your buyer's agent, share of his commission, now if you take that away somehow, right? Then the buyers, if they're gonna have representation, they're gonna have to pay their agent, say 3%. If we talk about closing costs, just making general figures up, this isn't exact, but say you had like a $400,000 house, your closing costs might be $7,000 or $8,000, okay? So you think about for your down payment, your first time home buyer, maybe you're putting 3.5% down, maybe you're buying your second house and you have enough to put 20% down, okay? Now you're having to come with closing costs, again, probably $7,000 or $8,000, roughly about 2% of the purchase price. And then in addition to that, now you're gonna have some kind of compensation for your buyer's agent, right? Say it's the same 2.8%. You're not lowering costs, you're increasing the cost for buyers. Now out of the two sides, sellers and buyers, which of these two have more equity at this point in time? It's sellers, right? So we're taking away maybe an expense in theory for the sellers and we're passing along to the buyers. We say, okay, well, what about if there's no buyer's agent? What about if you just find the house on your own? Well, I'll say that I represent my buyers quite well. And in many situations over the past year, I've been able to save my buyers on average about $12,000. So whether it be off of the cost of the house, whether it be in inspection items, whether it be buying down the interest rate, because in your negotiations, you can say, I want a certain amount of credit towards my closing costs in which I can buy down the interest rate to be a little lower to make it a little easier to pallet right now. So anyway, buyer's agents do a lot and they ask most of my clients when they get a house, they're so thankful that they had representation through a stressful process. It's very complicated. Someone who's expert in negotiations. Now, I myself, I've been a realtor for 8 years. I've been a licensed mortgage lender for almost 4 years, going on my 4th year. I have a great wealth of experience. In August, for example, there's 44,000 agents and I was ranked number 25. So there's a great deal of representation you're getting both on the sell side and the buy side when working with an agent. This suit is more of a cash grab than anything. About 2 or 3 years ago, they were just about to settle this, but this year they decided that maybe they could get a little bit more money by continuing the suit, and we are where we are now. In the end, I think everything will work itself out because the industry sees value in working with a realtor. When you have that independent third party with complicated negotiations, people love their house. They think it's worth so much money. When an inspection item comes up, they get offended that they have to fix it. It's great to have a third party representing your interests. You wouldn't go into a court case and represent yourself and expect the same outcome as if you had hired a professional lawyer. So if you have any more questions about this or anything real estate related, I'd be happy to share my expertise.